Everyone good with that? You done your hair, makeup, all good? Tremendous. Okay, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I now welcome Mr. Michael Rohloff and Mr. Graeme Nicholson. And gentlemen, for the Hansard record, if you could please give your name and state the capacity in which you appear today.
Michael Bruce Rohloff, I appear as a driver, and probably representing a few drivers as well I've been talking to in the last few months.
Fantastic.
Graeme Nicholson, owner of Nicholson and Page Transport. I've got two hats on today because I still drive one of my B doubles, and I've run my own business for the last 30 odd years, and we've got a small fleet, so I've got two hats on today.
You're allowed to have as many hats as you like. At the end of the day, we're talking to men and women, men who are actually in the industry, which is fantastic. So, gentlemen, I'm getting, you know the rules by now. The rules, the way we do it, as flexible as we are. I'm going to offer you both the opportunity to give opening statements. Really want to hear from you. It does give me great pleasure. The submissions and the witnesses we have all been valued, but I really love hearing from truck drivers and those trucking companies. So, guys, fire away. And Michael, we'll start with you. You just got nominated by Graeme then, by the way.
Thanks, Graeme. Good morning, Senators. I thank you and everyone else involved for giving me the opportunity to come here today. And as a witness to the inquiry, I come solely as a driver of some 20 years. As stated in my submission, I have a variety of experience in different roles. One of the main areas I'm concerned with is the logbook, or lie book, or cheat sheets, as commonly referred to amongst drivers. It has no real bearing on fatigue. However, as a legal document, it must be filled out and signed off. A good driver can go above and beyond what is required on any given day, and with hard work, preparation, organisation, etc., to turn up for a shift and load and I've lost my place here. On any given day with hard work, preparation, organisation, etc. When a driver has to turn up for a shift load and get held up for whatever reason, there is no provision for it in the logbook. It simply goes in as a rest break. Then this turns into a problem later on as fatigue kicks in. This waiting time should be recorded in the driver's diary and signed off by staff at the loading facility, just as the driver is made to declare his fitness before leaving the site. The chain of responsibility, as I said in my submission, ends as a declaration attached to the manifest is signed off by the driver. At least if there's a provision for documentation of hold-ups in unloading and reloading, then the driver gets remunerated for it, instead of putting it down as a rest break so that he can then continue on, get the trip money, the K money, whatever he's on. Okay, parking bays. Early on my career, back around 2004, I found parking bays on the Hume Highway in particular hard to get a spot in to rest late at night. While doing a lot of work on the rest areas along the Hume, especially in Victoria, are a lot better. And I have noticed early in the stage of 2004, there was a lot of crashes in Victoria. Now there doesn't seem to be as many. New South Wales, however, is desperately lacking in this area. While only doing mainly day work in the past 5 years, I haven't had to use parking bays as much. Just last week, I was required to do a changeover at Marulan for an urgent delivery for a client. As I was out of hours at Marulan, I spent the night there. Early the next day, the parking area at the BP Marulan to be full and trucks parked along the dirt after the exit. Same was the case at Pheasant's Nest. Just as warehouses and distribution hubs have expanded to cater for more trucks, parking bays need to as well. In recent months, I've reached out to colleagues in transport. Some are mentors and great mates of mine. Some are 40 and 50-year veterans. Others are younger than myself. One thing we all agree on is issues with logbook and fines. The driver coming into the industry that are inexperienced, the accidents, the deaths that are happening. The day is gone when you can get in the truck with your dad as a kid and learn. A couple of my mates have, by the way, some of the younger ones. Issues of OH&S like wearing gloves when you've never worn them in your life and being pressed on the issue at certain areas, and then the very same load that you're loading, you get sent to a delivery point for a measly 4 tonnes, which you can't even get a semi-trailer in. You know, it should be going to the depot from the people you're working for. We all agree that experience should be from the bottom up in the transport company, with all kinds of trucks from 2-tonne trays to B-doubles. Give the transport companies a package to be able to train new drivers. Another suggestion is to listen to drivers as they are the ones out there doing the work in the industry. This is all from drivers that I've spoke to on the phone.
Okay, yeah, that's good. So listen to the drivers.
Listen to the drivers. Get back to, look, we've got all these organisations that are deciding HVRs and HVLs, and to be honest, some of the laws, like even to do with vehicle dimensions, I don't look into them unless I'm going to that stage. I make sure the weights are right, it's fueled up, tyres are good. Some of the checks we've got to do on a truck, you've got to tick off. It's like a full maintenance report. How am I going to do? That's when it's pouring down rain out at the Southern Cross Terminal at Chipping Norton. You know, like I've got my little headlight torch. I'm going around getting wet, making sure the load was secured properly before I go, because I didn't load it. I'm just there to hook on and go. You know what I mean? Like,
I know exactly.
yeah. Just one other thing on my opening statement here. One of my colleagues, a 50-year veteran, said, "Get back to the basics," which we've heard off other people that have. Which is a very big point of mine. He said, train them in an old banger with 6-rod suspension. Yeah. So no doubt you've heard most of what I've had to say here today. And
on a Queensland road, that was what
yeah, with a big high load of hay.
Been there, done that.
Yep.
Not the hay, but okay. Michael, thank you very much, mate. I'm just writing a little note down there. Graeme, please.
Thanks for the invite. I've been in the industry for 38 years, started off as a driver, then progressed to my first truck in 1991, and today I operate a small fleet of 10. In that time I've covered 7.5 million Ks myself, and I still drive one of our B-doubles.
7.5 million kilometres.
Yeah. And I still got my original licence and my original points.
Oh, wow.
And in that time I've done overnight express, I've done fridge vans, I had heavy haul floats. The only things I haven't carted is fuel and cattle. That's the only two things I haven't carted in the industry. So I pretty well know what's going on with a lot of it. I've got a few, like from the first hat I was on from the owner-operator, small company payment. Why can't we be paid in 7 days after a return of paperwork with the electronic systems we have today? This 30 days and 60 days is just ridiculous. Cash flow is the life of the small business. That I know, like I've wheedled out a lot of my clients, the people that were slow payers. I don't work for them anymore. I've got mostly on 14-day payments, 14-day payments. The boost to cash flow is enormous, and when you see that happening, all of a sudden you've got money to spend on maintenance. You've got money to spend on paying off debt. You've got money to invest in the new gear. That's from my own experience, from being able to be paid on time. And that doesn't cost the industry any money. It doesn't cost one person. I deliver into Aldi and Woolworths and Coles. Their product goes onto the store and they're paid immediately. We have to wait. Why? Like it's a push of the button. Return paperwork, push of the button, everyone gets paid for the job they do. Fuel's the biggest costing in apart from wages. I think we paid way too much for fuel. This submission was written when fuel had dropped 20 cents a litre, and I use around 120,000 litres of fuel a month. That put $24,000 a month into our pocket, which then we could spend on maintenance, we could spend on updating the gear with the tyres, all that sort of thing. And I'm a bloke that pulls up a set of lights and I'll look at the truck next to me, and I'll have a look at the tyres, have a look at the different things. When that fuel dropped, during that time you could pull up and you'd see they had good tyres on. They didn't have rubbish ball tyres, they had good tyres on because people had money to invest back into the industry, and that flows back in through the whole economy by having that money supercharge the economy. A professor in Adelaide did a study many years ago on what 10 cents a litre off fuel would do for the economy, and it was a massive boost of money injected into the economy. When that was going on, I just know from the whole thing that everyone was buoyant. The industry felt good because we all had money in our pocket. We had money to spend on equipment. That's based on my own experience. Registration fees.
I was wondering how long before someone would actually throw that at me. I've been
the current
dying
system.
here.
This is fact. The current system. The Dodgem car operator has a B-double of cars. He's Dodgem cars around. Now he's told me himself he does 16,000 Ks a year.
I thought you were being frivolous. Dodgem car operator.
Yeah, the Dodgem car operator. Yeah. He pays $17,000 a year to pay for his registration on his B-double. He does 16,000 Ks. My operation, we do around 200 to 240,000 Ks a year, and we pay $17,000 rego. The big multinationals, they can hot seat their trucks.
Yeah.
work them 7 days a week, do enormous Ks, 400 to 500,000 Ks. I know of one operations that does 400 to 500,000 Ks a year in their trucks.
I do too.
They pay $17,000 a year reg check. How can that be fair? Like, it's just not fair. It's I worked out years ago if you did away with registration fees to collect, I think it's $40,000 short of $1 billion the government collects on registration fees. Put 8 cents a litre on fuel, and that collects the same amount of money. Therefore, the person using that road for 500,000 kilometres is going to pay for that road, not the Dodgem car operator who only does 16,000 Ks. The registration system is just so antiquated, but we need to move forward to a more fairer system where it takes. I can't compete because I can't do the big kilometres. Like, we don't have depots where we can quick hitch trailers and hot seat drivers. We don't operate like that. So that's one of my gripes. Toll roads, out of control. Absolutely out of control. Now, toll roads do save a little bit, but this North Connects, we don't have an alternate route. It's $50 in and out. It's $25 each way. That's an enormous hit, and we still have to travel that distance. People think that you just go in and out. You still have to travel that distance, so you burn fuel for that distance, the same as Penadils Road. It's just the traffic through the day, you save your time. You definitely save time. It's a brilliant bit of engineering, but it's way too dear. That's toll roads.
$50 one way.
25 each way.
Oh, 25 each way.
So we have 4 trucks a night come in there.
Yeah, but you just put it back onto your client.
Yeah. You know
What's
as
the
well as I
drama?
do. I've only got one.
Just ask the police.
I've only got one that's paid.
How much extra fuel you use in Northby and they going up there
Very
with a fully loaded boot?
very minuscule. Like, we haven't seen big.
Just
big-
for
We haven't
everyone
seen
listening,
big
I really
saving
was
fuel.
being sarcastic.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, that's all right.
I
That's
know
all right.
you know that.
That's all right. Now, driver training is just ridiculous. Like, I drove my first semi-trailer to Sydney when I was 14. The guy I was with, a friend of the family, had an asthma attack, and I had to get in and drive it. And he said, if you're going to learn to drive a truck, you're going to learn tonight. And full semi-trailer, and
Sitting on a milk crate? Sitting on a milk crate so you can see over the
no,
steering
I was
wheel?
this tall then. I was this tall.
Oh, okay.
And every school holidays then I jumped in that truck and I drove it the whole school holidays. So by the time I got my licence at 18 and 19, I'd done a lot of kilometres. So old truck with no
Good old
horsepower.
days, Graeme.
No horsepower. It was just, and drive. So you don't have that opportunity today to teach these young guys because even my son, I can't take him with me to these places.
Isn't that just
That's the problem.
criminal?
And because you're not allowed to, and to get your licence, you have to go to a driver training school that drives around a little body truck
I know.
with a weight on the back. You get your licence, and then you put in a 600 horsepower B double that night to go do
Just while you're on that, if I may interrupt, the training industry itself are very critical of the standards now. They are, and we've had them
Right.
before us yesterday. They are really peed off with this. And I'd made the statement we should throw it all out and start again.
Yeah.
So just there are some,
I know.
like the trucking industry, there's a couple of rat bag operators that
Well,
are able to get away with that.
One of my
Not all
good
of
friends, his son drives for me now. When he was a young guy, he took him into a plasterboard place in Brisbane to show him how to strap a loaded plasterboard on, and they wouldn't have let him do it
Why would we do that? Just make it
because
safer.
you've got 2 people in the truck.
I know.
Not allowed.
I know.
You're not allowed. You've got to
Just
stay in the gatehouse.
Does my head.
You know, it's just wrong. So that's my point of view from, and the NHVR is useless. The NHVR is the worst organisation I've had anything to do with. It's just beyond the joke. It's the greatest pit of money that just goes in and disappears. And what do they achieve? When you ring them up, the first recording is we do not offer any professional advice. So what do you ring the NHVR up for? You ring them up to get advice, but that's on their recording. We do not. You have to seek professional advice elsewhere.
In terms of what?
Anything that's on
Or
their
anything.
first phone. That's the first bit on their phone call when you ring them up. So that's on the driver's side. Fatigue, the crashes. All crashes happen, or not all, but 90% or more happen inside legal logbook hours.
Yes.
So,
Yes, I've
hello,
seen that.
we have a problem. The problem is safety cam. The safety cam, you can ask any driver you want, they'll say the biggest problem we've got tonight is getting past those cameras.
Can I just make a comment on that, Graeme?
Yeah.
I have to jump onto this. And I don't mind, I'm like a truckie too. I like to
Yeah.
tell people what I'm thinking, whether they want to hear it or not. But the safety cam, this was part when and I will say this, when the RSRT was dismantled, I think it was about 4 million, I can't remember, the government at the time, and I will be political here, said that the money that was used or set aside to fund the RSRT would increase road safety because it all went into safety cams.
Well, that doesn't work.
Just thought I'd share that.
Well,
Just
unless
thought I'd share that. You started it, not me.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But the safety cams are a problem. So, okay, they're going to be here to stay. The RMS think it's a wonderful thing. They've caught 5 blokes for being over hours. Whoopie-doo. But so we need to give the driver the tools to manage his fatigue. And at the moment, the driver hasn't got the tools to manage the fatigue himself. He's governed by the safety cam and the work diary. I've got no problem with the work diary as it is now. So I've suggested, and I put this proposal to the NHVR, which was just went straight over their head. Twice now I've done this. We need to be able to break the 7-hour break once a week. If we have a fluid system, such as hydraulic system, water system, the transport system is a fluid system, you keep pushing pressure into that system, at some stage it'll break. It'll find the weakest point. In the transport industry, the weakest point's the driver. So it mightn't happen this week, mightn't happen next week, mightn't happen the 3rd week, it might happen the 4th week. If you keep jamming pressure into him, and during the system we're so rigid at the moment, we don't have a relief pressure valve for him to release that pressure, for him to pull up and have those couple of hours on the side of the road like we used to do. Just pull up when we feel a bug and you have 3 or 4 hours. That he can do that, but then that penalises him the next day in his hours in the next 24-hour period. So I put to the NHVR, we don't need AFM. They want to push us all onto AFM, the 16-hour regime, which is just, I don't want that. Certain people do, but we don't want it. If we had a BFM plus system where you can prove that you're a good operator, you put your blokes through a proper fatigue management course, because at the moment anyone here can do a fatigue management course for me online. Well, I don't even answer one question, you know, and all of a sudden I'm allowed to do 14 hours. That's the system we have now. So if we had a proper system where we train drivers in fatigue management, like we did the proper one back in TFM days, 20 odd years ago, it was a 2-week course, two weekends we had to do it. And there was 40 of us did it and through DECA, and I don't think that any of those 40 guys have ever had a crash, because I know them all personally, I'm pretty sure. So we must have learned something out of it. And we need to be able to do that so that driver can break that 7 hours every now and then when he really feels like he needs to pull up and have that couple of hours sleep. Because at the moment, he can't. He has to stay within those camera hours. I drive along now with a notepad, writing down every time I go into one of those cameras so that I can make me book match those cameras. And so I know I can calculate my time all the way between the cameras so that I'm working out how many hours I'm allowed the next day. All you do is calculate the whole time there. And that's where it's putting pressure on the driver. We need to let the driver manage his own fatigue more, because everyone's different. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
You're different, I'm different. Like, I like to do things a different way. But at the moment, there's too rigid. The system is just too rigid. There's no room for a guy to just pull up and wait for his mate to pull up to come along so they can travel together. You can't do that.
And the fine. I did a fatigue management course with Elliott's Transport from Chairman about 10 years ago. Not even a month into it, I was getting hauled over the coals at Marulan for 15 minutes because I started work too early. I did me 14 hours a day before I got to the yard. I got talking to the boys. I actually woke up, felt really good.
Yeah.
I'll go to work.
Yeah.
I'm going to come in here, guys, because this is a real Pandora's box. And I think the key here is we are all different. Now, a smart senator would just let you guys keep going and hope that you got off the fatigue management argument so I could deflect it onto something else. So you could accuse me of not being a smart senator. But as someone who came through the system, who learnt at the hip of my old man, where Mum would say when the old man got back from the east, for God's sake, get these boys out my hair, they're going to work with you. Much to his disgust. But anyway, he hadn't seen us for 2 weeks, and then he had the boys hanging around him. We learnt. And we all learnt the hard way. And we all, as our years went through, we became good drivers because we'd stuffed up down the road and learnt from our mistakes. Or we went to the old grumpy bloke in the lunchroom and said, what do I do here? That's how we did it. And they keep telling me we can't go back to those days. But I just want to say this. If we think the system we've got now is good, they're really on another planet, the legislators thinking this. Absolutely. So, fatigue management, here we go, right. And I confess the sins of my previous life that I was on the working group for the West Australian Fatigue Management System. And the fatigue management system in Western Australia prior to the truck crash coming down Greenmount of the grain carter where 2 people were killed was jolly ho, yay, charge, go boys, and as soon as you get back, you get another trip. And that's how we operated. And those who ran the West before that came in, new. And anyway, we ended up in a scheme that's far different. Do I think that 17 hours truck drivers should be driving 17 hours a day? Not my business. Ask me personally, when I'm stuck, or not, sorry, I'd made this very clear when I was on the working group. If I'm coming, and I was running Darwin, if I was coming out of Darwin, and I'm like a lot of truck drivers, those those ponies in the riding schools, you kick the living daylights out of them and get them going. As soon as they turn for home, hang on. Well, that was me coming home. And if I had to think that I'd pull up, and I think your regime in the time before the AFM and the BFM over here was about 11 and a half days. How do I know that? Because I had the cheat sheet. And I ran over it. Make no mistake about that. And I had made the logbook, all right, for those who ready to pounce on me. And I'd made a decision, if I could only drive 11 and a half hours a day, how was I going to make a living? Not that, you're right, I should only have to drive 11 and a half hours a day because I'm going to be remunerated properly and they're going to put me in a nice hotel where I get a toilet and shower. So here we go. How do we fix the fatigue management? What should it be? And I know, Graeme, that you've gone down with a few examples. But what I do know now, the current system is not flexible.
No, that's the bit I pushed in this last conference we had in Sydney about it. I said there's got to be flexibility in it. And they debated it for 2.5 hours what the word flexibility meant. So that's how far it's going to go. Yeah, 2.5 hours, mate, so it wasn't too bad.
We took 6 years to do fatigue, mate.
The way I managed, like I've had trucks for 30 odd years, we've had one accident in that whole time. And it's total driver error, nothing to do with pressure, nothing to do with fatigue. Our guys all do 240,000 Ks a year. Yep. We've got all long-term employees, all of them been, one guy 15, we had one bloke wore out 4 trucks, he's retired now. We pay them excellent money, they really do get good money. We had one truck, one trailers, there's no swapping trailers, there's no carry on. We have double beds in our trucks, all got K200s with double beds, fridges and all the gear in them, air conditioners on the sleeper, all that sort of cable. We do probably 80% of our work for Aldi, and I'll go along with what Damien said. There is an avenue in there with for Aldi. We're at the bottom though. We're at the bottom of the ladder, but as far as contractors with them. But there's an avenue for if we get held up at one place loading. A couple of customers are really slow loading. We charge hourly rate for the trucks.
Demurrage.
Yep, demurrage, and we can drive out. After 2 hours that the trucks are there, we drive out and we get paid for the load. So Aldi have that provision in their contracts. And we don't enforce it that much because I just go get another load off someone else. I've been in the game long enough, we can soon get a load. But sometimes if we get stuck, we can do that. So a lot of things he said was right, a lot of things he said wasn't right about hold up at DCs and things like that. But out of all of them, Aldi is probably the best one to unload at compared to Woolies and Coles.
I won't be blowing wind up for Coles and Woolies back.
They are some major delays at those places, and it's all work practices. That's their biggest problem. It's beyond the joke at some of those places. The time that they take to unload a truck, physically the time. You know, the driver can just stand there and do nothing, but the time it takes that forklift to lift those pallets off, he goes off somewhere else and comes back, and then they go to Smoko, and it goes on and on. But the Aldi are trying to do their best. There's some they let some things slip through the cracks. There's no two ways about that. But they try to do their best, and they're in a competitive game, a really competitive game, and they find efficiencies through tenders. Like I said, the word tender in the dictionary should be just changed to rate cut. That's what it means. Because when they tender out for stuff, it's always the cheapest that gets it. There's no two ways about it. And that's how these big companies find efficiencies, and it reflects on us. It comes back to affect us because we're at the bottom of the end of the day. We're the ones that have to carry it.
The price takers,
and then I've got to find that money to pay the drivers. I've got to find all that. We've got to find efficiencies other ways in the trucks by.
All right, so Graeme, from small, see, I've managed to skip past fatigue.
Yeah.
You see the way I did that?
I just want to say one thing on the fatigue, right?
Yeah.
I'm 14 hours accredited. If I worked for Graeme the other night, I'd have been able to make it home after doing that changeover. My employer...
You're an owner driver, sorry, what?
Well, if I had been working for Graeme on Wednesday last week, I would have made it home after doing the urgent changeover I was talking about. My employer doesn't have the 14-hour accreditation. So what's the difference between me doing 12 and 14? A bit of paper. In a course, like, I haven't had an accident due to fatigue. It's not that I haven't been affected by it in 20 years. When I was doing... I know how to manage it. When I was doing big K's chairman at Sydney, Melbourne, which is what I mainly did for 8 years, You pull over when you need a nap. And some days, what you lose in driving hours, you don't get back the next day. You just don't get them back. If you chose to have a rest instead, and this is why blokes push themselves.
Yeah. And with what Mike said about the length of trucks, I've got the K200, all my doubles are under 26 metres, and we don't need 26, but we've got the big beds and all that sort of stuff in them. And but the length of trucks is something I think the government needs to push more to help manage fatigue. Like the safety can system there forever, that's the rigid part. But we need to make a flexible bit, and we need to make it better for the driver by allowing, I can have, one of my mates has got a truck that's 26.1 metres long. He's out at the pads at Moree getting rowed up, and a 30-metre B double drives past him. 30-metre road train drives past him.
Sure.
And you look, hello, just because he's gone and got the truck with the bigger sleeper.
Yeah.
This
It's madness.
30-metre thing drives past with a cab this big.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
know?
For an extra 2 pallets.
And for those that are sorry, Graeme, for those that are listening this big, Graeme had his hands 12 inches apart, okay? Because Hansard won't pick that up.
Oh, right.
No, but let me just come back to this, because I think the most important thing that I'm sick to death of hearing truck drivers saying nothing's going to happen, and with that attitude, nothing will happen. I've got to tell you, as long as my backside's pointing to the ground, okay, I'm going to keep talking about it, because my whole view is if we don't talk about this, in 30 years' time, my young bloke will be saying to his young bloke, I've heard all this crap before, nothing's changed. So, going back to this, very, very clearly, there is not one silver bullet. We know that. But there are so many things where you can join together that will not cost the nation, and even the manufacturers and the National Farmers Federation and all this mob can all jump on and go, ooh, if we have to pay our truck drivers more, someone else is going to go broke. What a load of rubbish. Okay, now let's get back to this. But something as simple, we know fatigue, we know truck bays, we know 60, 90-day payments. I'm from the old school, you should get paid COD. But I'm the only one saying that, okay? And I went on strike. Let me tell you, me and my mates at Ansett, we went out the gate and parked up for 3 days to get paid. So I had put my money where my mouth is to get paid. So we go back to all these little things. But when you start talking about complex things like fatigue management, there's all sorts of arguments coming up, but it should not be buried. But something the length of a vehicle, which we know will cost nothing.
Absolutely.
It could cost nothing. Something as simple as that will address other knock-on issues. We still need truck bays and rest areas. It's not going to fix that. But it can go to a lot better, healthy lifestyle for the truck driver, for the owner driver, bringing women into the industry, bringing young people into the industry. It's not one bullet, but it has a knock-on effect in other areas.
Rest areas in Australia are just atrocious. Like I did market out of Melbourne only a few weeks ago, and I market on Brisbane markets, and I had to be off the road by 1:30 in the morning. Like I just go 4:24, come back 7. That's when I've got to be off the road for. I mean, book. I got into Brisbane markets at midnight, and I was unloaded by 20 to 1, and I thought that'll be good. I'll go around in the BP at Archerfield and have a shower and go to bed.
Couldn't get
I
in.
got around there was just absolutely nowhere to park. And I drove around for an hour and a half trying to find somewhere to park.
Go find the local member of parliament's house and park out in front of
Exactly.
him.
I was out of hours, and I was still driving around the streets in Brisbane trying to find somewhere to park. And I drove back into BP, and someone drove off, and I was shot into his spot, and went out of shower and went to bed. All I wanted to do was go to bed, but there was nowhere. Sydney's the same. Melbourne's the same. I had one of my drivers many years ago in Melbourne pulled up outside the truck stop in Melbourne because he couldn't fit in. He's in the street, and a truck pulled out, and he started up, and he drove in, and by the time he stopped, Vic Rose was beside him and said, "Where's your logbook?" And he hadn't filled his logbook out. And they banged him for not filling his logbook out. Now, they must have been watching him because he was parked on the street where he shouldn't have been because there was nowhere else to park. So this sort of stuff this is what upsets drivers, and they get this him and them and us attitude. But there's no infrastructure provided. This PBS is producing all these bigger trucks and bigger units, and
That's right.
there's no infrastructure to go with it.
That's right.
We want more aeroplanes, so they build a big Badgerys Creek airplane. They build Badgerys Creek Airport. But we've got bigger trucks, more trucks. There's no infrastructure.
You guys are giving me a few headaches. I'll give you one. All right. So here's the return. Here's the return volley. And it goes back to this. I am seriously of the opinion, and I say this without any fear or favour, just so everyone knows, I was actually a member of the Transport Workers Union, and I hear the criticisms, and I get all that. And I've been on both sides of the fence arguing all sorts of stuff like that. And I can safely say that I had a very good experience. Very good. because we united, we were answered, it became TNT, and we blew together in our own patch. And I've represented truck drivers in many sectors of the industry as a union organiser. But one great sadness that we have here, and I don't know the answer, I know what I'd like to see. The men and women who are running long distance, interstate, line haul, intrastate, whatever, have not got a voice. Now, there are certain industry representatives who say that they're the main player in the country and they're the main voice for trucking. I've not backed away from this. I've said, what an absolute load of bull. I don't get Christmas cards from them, okay? Because the drivers are not represented in that forum when they're having a cup of tea and a cucumber sandwich with the Minister for Transport in Canberra. How do we get our truckies together? Instead of just getting on the UHF saying, nothing's going to happen, it's all going to stay the same.
Well, we've got a culture that's in the game too, that if you drive a big bonnet, you can drive for less.
I haven't heard that one. You know what I was told as a young bloke when I got my first...
There's a fair culture like that.
Well, I'll tell you my one. I was told by an old grumpy bloke in the lunchroom once, I'm going to tell you this right now, and I thought he'd made it up. I didn't realise it was an old saying. He said, if you can finally learn to drive this road ranger, we might make you a test driver at a Mack factory, because if you can't Mack, no one will.
There is a certain culture in this game, and blokes are quite happy to take a pay cut if, as long as they've got a big bonnet out the front.
Well, I thought it was chrome and lights.
Yeah, and that too. Yeah, some bloke.
Not with the ones with the pearl steering wheel.
But there's a lot of them like that. There's a lot of them like that. And blokes said they're just happy to drive a big shiny truck.
No, I understand that.
And they're not going to stand up and help us try and make the game any
They're all
better.
keen on the two-wayer on the social media. When you pull them aside in the parking bay, which I have done, they turn the water.
Absolutely. And look, it's
They think there's going to be a fisticuffs now. I couldn't fight my way out of a wet paper bag. If someone hit me, I'd do the same, you know. But you want to talk to them, you pull them aside. Well, what are we going to do?
Michael, in my previous life of coming off the road as a long-distance truck driver running between Perth and Darwin on the CB, not UHF, we didn't have them, owner drivers, gobshite on. Then I became the organiser and walked in their yard on the Friday Arvo when they were loading, and I didn't think you could shrink wrap one pallet 48 times. So he didn't have to come and say good day to me in case I asked him a hard question, when you're going to stand up and fight for the rates you talk about on the UHF, on the CB.
It's an attitude that's
all
needs
right.
to be changed.
Well, here's the one that'll get me a blood nose somewhere. This is why, in my simple view, in my little world of Stirlville, this is where governments need to step in. Governments need to stand up and say, we collect a lot of money from the trucking industry, we talk up safety as though we've invented it, but we're not doing anything to put in place where the drivers actually have the ability, and trucking companies, let's not forget the companies, all of them, to be able to be safe, sustainable, viable and profitable. So one man's regulation is another man's safety net. Take that one away.
Well,
Watch the hate that's coming through on the Facebook anyway. That's what I believe.
Like they've introduced these seeing eye machines and vibrating seats. Look, there was a racehorse owner trainer in Victoria got banned from the industry by cattle prodding his horses.
That's exactly
Now, if you've got a vibrating seat, why that bloke should be allowed to go to bed, not to wake up again.
I'm just setting me up.
Mate, I'm totally against it. I'm totally against it. I don't have any of that stuff in my trucks because I trust my drivers, and we've got the records, we've got the runs on the board. I trust my drivers. I don't need to do that sort of stuff to my drivers. I think that's just an absolute disgrace. If a driver is tired of a human body, in the war, they used to use that as a tactic to keep everyone awake. And I just think that's so wrong that we've got vibrating seats to wake a driver up. He should be allowed to pull up when he's tired and go to bed. And if you've got an eye machine on a bloke, if his eyes are dropping, that's too late. I know from my own experience, that's too late. He should have been in bed 2 hours ago, not going like this and getting a phone call from someone saying you're nodding off, mate. You know, like I don't believe in that stuff.
Okay.
I don't think that's the answer at all.
And the beauty of this nation
I'll
is...
second that, by the way.
Okay, the beauty of this nation is, gents, that we can have differences of opinions and we hear each other out. I must confess to my first reaction was, I wouldn't want that. But I did see a bit of footage, and look, at the frighten the living daylights out there. I get that, I get that. But I did see footage, a company did show me, and no names, no pack drill, of a driver whose eyes were shut and actually head down, and the seat went off, and his first reaction came out swinging and swearing and carrying on. Another one I saw, okay, another one I saw where the truck actually went off the road,
Yeah, I've seen that too.
cut through the corner, come back on the road. And in all fairness to the driver, when he was quizzed about it, no, he didn't. And then they showed him the footage, and he resigned. He came off the road.
Ask him
I'm just
why.
saying.
Why is that driver doing it? Why is he nodding off? What's going on? How come he's so tired when he's only driven a couple of hours from home? That's what we should be looking at. We shouldn't be looking at anything else. We should be looking at asking the driver, investigate it.
I fully understand. I just thought it would be weak of me not to just say.
There's other technology. I drive a DAF, and I'm proud to say it. It's a very good truck. Got a Kenworth rear end in it. So that probably makes it a bit better. But
So it's okay
the
when it's going
adaptive
backwards?
cruise control lane departure technologies are in that truck. I've come up behind a B-double doing 45 k's an hour up money,
Faster at that.
right? And it backs itself off before I've seen it. Now, what's wrong with that sort of technology other than a camera pointing out? If it's detected your swap, you're over the lines a few times, it shuts itself off.
And the alarm goes off too, then.
Sure.
Well, mine actually doesn't work properly, the lane departure one, thank God. But I mean,
Guys, nuts.
this is from my boss has told me to say that about the technologies there in the vehicle. The adaptive cruise control is, while it's not perfect, at times it will slam the trailer brakes on, which is a real problem if you don't know what to do when that happens. We've all had an airline brake, but I mean, lane departure, the adaptive cruise, it's a good idea.
Sure. Okay, gentlemen, I think we could have a real tete-a-tete here. I just want to let you know it's all about me, so I just want to say thank you very much, guys. But when I was pulling that road training back from Kununurra there a couple of months ago, I went into the yard, road trained into the yard, and I had to get around a container and past another trailer and past another couple of containers, crawling along. I could have rolled along quicker than that. And the truck, the Mercedes, determined that my bull bar was too close to the one I was trying to get round. I was going to get round, and nearly threw me through the windscreen, frightened the crap out of me.
Well, a mate had one on trial, and he goes up to Dorrigo to load timber, and the road's like that,
Right.
and it sensed the road in front of him and jacked the brakes on and threw him out of the seat.
There you go. All right. We won't get into a punch up over that. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Now, we're going to take a break. Now, help me out, Jerry. I always get this wrong. We are going to lunch. No, Kevin. Sorry, Mr. Mitchell. Sorry very much. So, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, sorry, mate. I tried to cut you off. You come all this way, and I'm ready to go to lunch.